The air inside the Dalton house felt heavy that Thursday night, the kind of silence that comes before a storm. Claire Dalton dropped her purse by the door, her shoulders aching from another 12-hour shift at the logistics office. She expected the usual, her mother half asleep in front of the TV, the faint hum of the dishwasher, but instead she heard voices, laughter, a woman's laughter. When she turned the corner into the kitchen, Linda Dalton, her mother, was standing by the stove, smiling in a way Claire hadn't seen in years. At the table sat Amber Dalton Reed, Claire's younger sister, flawless as always, her blonde hair swept into a glossy bun, a glass of Chardonnay in her hand. Beside her lounged Evan Reed, Amber's husband, scrolling through his phone like he was too important for the room. Linda turned at the sound of Claire's footsteps. "Oh, honey, you're home. Perfect timing." Claire blinked. "What's going on?" Amber tilted her head with that effortless grace she'd perfected since high school. "We've had a bit of bad luck. Evan's company downsized, and we got caught in it. We need a place to stay just for a while." Before Claire could respond, Linda said brightly, "They'll be moving in. It's only temporary." Claire froze. Moving in. Here, Linda nodded as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Of course. Family helps family. Evan didn't look up. Amber smiled faintly, like she'd already won. "Where exactly are they going to sleep?" Claire asked. Linda's voice dropped to that calm, dangerous tone that always ended arguments. "They'll take your room." Claire's chest tightened. "What, you can use the guest room," Linda continued. "Or move out. It's up to you." Amber leaned back, sipping her wine. "If you could be out by the weekend, that'd be great," she said cheerfully, like she was asking for a favor. For a long moment, nobody moved. The sound of the clock ticking filled the kitchen. Claire wanted to yell, cry, demand an explanation, but instead, she just nodded slowly. "Got it." Amber smiled wider. Linda looked relieved, and Evan finally put his phone down long enough to smirk. Claire picked up her purse again. "Then I guess I'll start packing." Outside, thunder rolled. The storm had finally arrived. The rain had been falling for days after her father's funeral, slow, steady, relentless. Claire Dalton remembered sitting on the front porch steps, the smell of wet earth mixing with the faint scent of lilies from the living room. Her father, Richard Dalton, had rebuilt this house with his own hands before he died. It was supposed to be their family's fresh start, the place where everything finally calmed down after years of arguments and bills. Instead, it had turned into a shrine of grief and silence. Linda Dalton hadn't left her bedroom for almost a week. She barely ate. She spoke even less. When Claire tried to make her tea, her mother would murmur, "I'm fine, Claire, just tired." Then she'd stare out the window for hours, eyes fixed on the old oak tree her husband planted the summer before he passed. Amber Dalton Reed had flown in for the funeral wearing a black silk scarf and oversized sunglasses, crying loud enough for the neighbors to hear. People hugged her. They said she was such a loving daughter. By Sunday, she was gone again, back to the city, back to her busy life. She left behind nothing but perfume and staged tears. Claire stayed. Someone had to. She paid the mortgage when Linda forgot. She cleaned the gutters when the roof leaked. She drove her mother to doctor appointments, grocery stores, and hair salons. Every paycheck went to bills, repairs, and dinners she ate alone at the counter. Sometimes, Claire would walk through the house late at night and still hear her father's voice, calm, patient, soft. "She just needs more grace. Sweetheart, take care of her for me." She always said she would, and she did. Years passed like that, quietly erasing the edges of her own life. She turned down a promotion in Seattle because the move would have meant leaving her mother alone. Her boss called her loyal. Claire called it necessary. But no matter how much she gave, it was never enough. "You should wear more color," Linda would say, her tone light but sharp. "Amber lights up a room. You dress like you're on jury duty." Or, "You should really try dating again. Even someone like you can still find someone." Claire would laugh it off, then go upstairs and cry quietly into her pillow, pretending it didn't matter. Every year, the house became less of a home and more of a museum of comparisons. Family dinners turned into monologues about Amber's new business ventures or how Evan spoils her just like her father did. Claire learned to stop expecting praise. She learned to stop expecting anything at all. Still, she stayed because that's what good daughters do. Until the night Amber came back with her husband and that familiar smile, the same smile she wore at the funeral before leaving everyone else to pick up the pieces. That night, Claire realized something her father never lived long enough to see. This house wasn't built to hold love. It was built to hold everything that broke after it. The next Thursday started like any other gray sky, lukewarm coffee, the drive home filled with the sound of rain tapping against the windshield. Claire Dalton rehearsed the same line she'd been telling herself for years. "It's fine. Everything's fine." But when she pushed open the front door, her words died in her throat. There, in the living room, sat Amber Dalton Reed, the golden child herself curled up on the couch with a tissue box in her lap, pretending to look fragile. Beside her was Evan Reed, her husband, half watching a sports clip on his phone. And in the kitchen, Linda Dalton was humming softly while arranging cookies on a tray as if royalty had come to visit. Amber Claire asked, her voice tighter than she meant it to be. Amber looked up, dabbing her eyes but smiling through the act. "Claire, we were just talking about you." Evan gave a polite nod but didn't move. Linda turned with an almost theatrical brightness. "Guess who's back for a little while?" "Isn't this wonderful?" Claire stepped farther into the room, dripping umbrella in hand. "Why are you here?" Amber sighed dramatically. "Evan's company downsized. He was let go. We're in a bit of a mess." Linda immediately filled the silence. "They'll stay here for a while until things settle. It's just temporary." The word temporary echoed like a warning. Claire's pulse quickened. "Here, in this house." "They're family," Linda said. "And family helps each other." Claire forced a smile. "Sure, family." As the night wore on, the house that had always been too quiet filled with chatter about Amber's struggles, how unfair the job market was, how expensive rent had become, how stressful it was being the responsible one. Claire almost laughed at that, responsible when she served herself leftovers. Amber wrinkled her nose. "Still eating those frozen meals? You really should learn to cook properly." "Claire, Evan and I went vegan last year." Linda chimed in. "You could take a few notes from your sister. She takes care of herself." Claire bit her tongue. She'd learned long ago that arguing never worked. Instead, she washed her plate, listening to the rain pound harder against the window. Later that night, she passed Amber's old bedroom, the door already open, suitcases lined up neatly. Evan's shoes were by the dresser. Amber's perfume hung heavy in the air. Through the doorframe, she heard her mother's laugh, light, adoring, alive. It had been years since Claire had heard that sound directed at her, and in that small moment, with thunder rolling in the distance, Claire understood exactly what was happening. Her sister hadn't come home for comfort. She'd come home to reclaim the spotlight. The next evening, Claire Dalton came home late from work, her shoes soaked, her jacket clinging to her from the rain. She paused at the doorway, instantly sensing it, the shift in the air, the faint smell of fresh paint, laughter from upstairs, and music playing softly from Amber's phone. It wasn't her house anymore. It was theirs. Boxes were stacked in the hallway. Her mother, Linda Dalton, was carrying a stack of folded towels, smiling like a hostess. "Oh, Claire, you're home. Perfect timing," she said, as if nothing had changed. Claire glanced at the chaos. "What's all this they're settling in?" Linda replied. "Amber wanted to rearrange a few things, maybe brighten the walls a little. It feels so much more alive already." Alive. The word stung. Claire dropped her bag on the table, trying to steady her voice. Mom, we talked about this. There isn't space for Linda cut her off. Her tone suddenly firm. They need help. Claire. Evan's looking for work. Amber's been under so much stress. You'll figure it out, you always do. Claire froze. She'd heard that phrase her entire life. You'll figure it out. It was how Linda justified every unfair request, every ignored boundary. Finally, Claire asked, where are they going to sleep in your room? Linda said simply, not meeting her eyes. Claire blinked. My room. Linda nodded. You can take the guest room or move out. It's up to you. The air left Claire's lungs. You're serious? I'm not discussing this, Linda said sharply. This house is in my name. I always wanted Amber back here. She belongs in this home. Amber appeared in the doorway then, wearing one of Claire's old sweaters like it belonged to her. She leaned against the frame, that familiar smirk tugging at her lips. If you could be out by the weekend, that'd be amazing. Evan and I really need the space. Claire stood still, rainwater pooling at her feet. For a moment, she almost laughed. It sounded absurd being exiled from the house she'd paid for, but when she looked at her mother's expression cold, something inside her shifted. She didn't argue, didn't beg, didn't cry. She just nodded once and said quietly, Got it. Amber smiled wider. Linda turned away. And in that silence, Claire realized the truth her father never said out loud. Love in this house was conditional, and she'd finally reached her limit. That night, Claire Dalton sat on the edge of her bed, or what used to be her bed, staring at the faint outlines of family photos on the wall where the frames had been taken down. The house that once echoed with her father's voice now hummed with Amber's laughter from the next room. The smell of her sister's expensive perfume drifted down the hallway, drowning out everything that once felt familiar. She opened the top drawer of her desk and pulled out a manila folder, creased and yellowed at the edges. Inside was an offer letter from her company's HR department, the one she'd declined years ago. The words relocation to Seattle glared back at her like a chance she once threw away. A quiet ache rose in her chest. Her phone buzzed. A text from her boss positions still open if you ever change your mind. Claire stared at it for a long time before typing 3 words. Is it available? The reply came seconds later. Yes. We'd love to have you. She exhaled, a small, shaky breath. That was it. No confrontation, no screaming. Just a decision. The next morning, she called the company housing office and secured a studio apartment, small, bright, close to work. She arranged movers for Saturday. Nobody noticed. Nobody asked. Linda and Amber were too busy arguing over what color to paint the kitchen. On Friday night, Claire began packing. Every box she taped shut felt like a breath of fresh air. She wrapped her books carefully, folded her clothes, unplugged the coffee maker, labeled each box with precision. When dawn broke, she stood in the doorway of her room one last time, tracing her fingers along the wall her father once painted. No goodbyes, no guilt. As she sealed the final box, a strange calm settled over her, the kind that comes not from running away, but finally choosing yourself. For the first time in years, Claire didn't feel trapped. She felt free. Saturday morning arrived with a cloudless sky, the kind of quiet brightness that made everything look sharper, more defined. Claire Dalton stood in the driveway in jeans and a simple t-shirt, her hair pulled into a loose ponytail. A moving truck rumbled to a stop beside her. The 2 movers stepped out, surprised by the number of neatly labeled boxes stacked by the porch. "You ready for the big move?" one of them asked with a grin. Claire gave a calm smile. "Yeah," she said. "Let's get started." They carried out everything piece by piece, her bed, her bookshelf, the coffee maker, the framed photo of her father she kept by her nightstand. Each item felt like reclaiming something that had quietly been stolen from her over the years. Inside, the house was chaos. Amber Dalton Reed and Evan Reed were asleep in Claire's old room. Blinds drawn, while Linda Dalton busied herself in the kitchen humming as if nothing unusual was happening. She didn't come out to help. She didn't even ask where Claire was going. By noon, the living room was bare. Dust outlines traced the ghosts of furniture once there. No TV, no dining table, no chairs, just sunlight spilling across the floor. One of the movers paused, glancing around. "You're really taking everything." Claire wiped her hands on her jeans, her voice steady. "Everything I bought." He nodded, understanding. When the last box was loaded, she stood in the doorway one final time. The house that had once been her refuge now looked hollow, stripped of its illusions. Every laugh, every insult, every sacrifice she'd made had been packed up and carried away. As the truck pulled out of the driveway, Claire whispered under her breath, "Good luck filling the emptiness." That afternoon, she unlocked the door to her new apartment, small, sunlit, and quiet. The hum of the fridge was steady. The air smelled new. She sat on the floor among boxes and exhaled deeply. No shouting, no guilt, no pretending. For the first time, silence didn't hurt. It healed. Monday morning came with sunlight creeping through the blinds of Claire Dalton's new apartment. She sat on the edge of her new bed, a mug of coffee in her hands, letting the warmth settle into her palms. It felt strange, peaceful, even. No slammed doors, no passive-aggressive remarks, just quiet. But peace never lasts long when guilt starts knocking. Her phone buzzed relentlessly, calls from Linda Dalton, her mother, followed by texts from Amber Dalton Reed that alternated between faux concern and thinly veiled anger. "You can't just disappear." "Claire, Mom's upset. You went too far." Claire turned the phone face down on the counter. She wasn't ready to go back. Not yet. By Tuesday afternoon, the front desk at her office called, Claire, there are 2 women here asking for you. They said it's urgent." She didn't have to ask who. She grabbed her bag, slipped out through the back loading dock, and drove straight home, to what used to be home. If they wanted a confrontation, she'd decide when it happened. When she arrived that evening, the porch light was on. Through the front window, the living room looked dark, stripped, and hollow. She almost didn't recognize it. She stepped inside without knocking. Linda stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, her expression hard. Amber sat at the table, tapping her nails against the wood, eyes red with frustration. "What the hell did you do?" Linda snapped. Claire's voice was calm. "I took what was mine." "You cleaned out the whole place." Amber's voice cracked. "There's nothing left, not even the toaster." Claire set her keys on the counter. "Then I guess you'll have to buy one." "Don't be smart with me," Linda shot back. "That's not how family behaves." Family Claire let out a quiet laugh. "You mean the people who told me to move out of the house I paid for?" Amber's jaw tightened. "You don't get to take everything just because you're bitter." Claire met her gaze evenly. "I didn't take everything, just what I bought. The furniture, the appliances, the decor, all of it came from my paychecks. I can show you receipts." Amber blinked, her confidence faltering. "What about the bank account you drained it?" Claire's tone sharpened. "That account was mine. Dad's insurance was gone years ago." Amber turned to Linda, her voice rising. "She's lying." "Right. You said the insurance money was still there." Linda's face went pale. She didn't answer. Amber's voice trembled. "Mom." Still nothing. "Tell me she's lying." "Finally," Linda whispered. "I thought we'd figure it out later." The room fell silent. Amber pushed back from the table, disbelief and fury blending in her eyes. "You said if we came back, we'd be okay. You promised." Claire crossed her arms. "You came back for money, not family." Amber's glare burned. "You ruined everything." "No," Claire said softly. "You just finally saw what was real." For the first time, the truth sat heavy between them, undeniable and raw. The house that had once been their pride was now just a shell, just like the illusion they'd built around love. And this was only the beginning of its collapse. The silence that followed felt endless, broken only by the slow drip of the kitchen faucet. Amber Dalton Reed stood frozen, her face pale beneath her perfect makeup. The confident, camera-ready sister who always had the answers now looked like a child lost in a storm. "You told me the insurance money was still there," Amber said, her voice trembling. "You said if we came back, we could start over." Linda Dalton clasped her hands together, shaking her head. "I didn't want you to worry." "I thought you thought." Amber's voice cracked into a laugh that sounded like a sob. "You lied. You let us come here believing there was something waiting for us." Claire Dalton stood by the counter, arms crossed, watching the two women unravel. It was surreal, like witnessing a play she'd once been trapped inside, now unfolding without her. Amber turned to her. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" Claire's voice was quiet. "No, but I'm not surprised." Amber's hands balled into fists. "You think you're better than us just because you pay bills and keep receipts?" "I don't think I'm better," Claire said. "I just stopped pretending." Linda stepped forward, desperate. "We can fix this. We can all work together again." "The mortgage, the bills." Claire cut her off. "No, Mom, you can figure it out. You made it clear this house isn't mine." Linda's eyes glistened, her voice shaking. "I said things I didn't mean. I was angry." "You meant every word," Claire replied softly. "And now you get to live with them." Amber slammed her palm on the counter. "This is insane. You're acting like we stole from you." Claire met her gaze. "You did. Time, money, years of my life I'll never get back." Amber's breathing quickened. "We wouldn't be in this mess if you hadn't emptied that account." "We wouldn't be in this mess," Claire said, "if you hadn't believed a lie was easier than the truth." For a moment, none of them spoke. The weight of every choice, every manipulation, every sacrifice hung heavy in the air. Amber turned to her mother, her tone dropping to a whisper. "You used the insurance, didn't you? You spent it." Linda's lips quivered. "On the house, on the renovations, on your wedding." Amber's mouth fell open. "You bought me that car." With Dad's money, Linda's silence was the only answer. Amber stepped back, her voice breaking. "You used everything. There's nothing left." Claire looked between them, her voice calm but cold. There never was. The illusion that had held their family together finally shattered, and in that moment, for the first time, Claire didn't feel small. She felt free. The kitchen felt colder than before, as if every word spoken had drained the air from the room. Linda Dalton sat at the table, her hands trembling against the wood. Amber Dalton Reed stood near the doorway, staring blankly at the empty space where the family's framed photos once hung. Claire Dalton, calm and steady, watched them both. For years, she had been the quiet one, the fixer, the peacekeeper. Now she was simply the witness to what she'd warned them about all along. Linda finally spoke, her voice small. "Please, Claire, don't walk away like this. You're the only one who knows how to fix things." Claire's tone didn't waver. "I already did, for 5 years. I fixed everything you broke, but you called me a burden. You told me to get out. I was angry," Linda whispered. "I didn't mean it." "Yes, you did," Claire said, "and now you get to live with what that means." Amber's voice cut through the tension. "You're really just going to leave?" After everything, Claire turned toward her sister, meeting her glare without fear. "After everything? Yes. I've given this family enough. I gave up promotions, relationships, a life. And when you came back, you took the last thing I had left, my home." Amber folded her arms. "You're heartless." "No," Claire said quietly. "I'm finally done." She reached into her tote bag and placed a white envelope on the counter. "That's the last mortgage receipt. The loan's still in your name. Mom, you'll have to make the payments now. 6 more years. Linda's lips parted. Claire, please, I'm not expecting anything. Claire interrupted. Not help, not thanks. Just accountability. Amber's voice rose, desperate. You can't just abandon us. I'm not abandoning you, Claire replied, heading for the door. I'm letting you take responsibility for once. Amber scoffed bitterly. We don't need you. We'll be fine. Claire paused, hand on the doorknob, and looked back. Good. Then you'll finally know what it feels like to stand on your own. As she stepped outside, the evening air hit her face cool, clean, and unfamiliar. Behind her, silence filled the space where a family used to be. It wasn't revenge, it was closure, and for the first time in her life, Claire didn't look back. A month later, the old Dalton house went up for sale. The neighbors whispered about how quickly it all fell apart, how the proud home Linda once showed off now sat empty. Blinds drawn, paint peeling. The final offer came in low, and she had to take it. Pride didn't pay the mortgage. Amber Dalton Reed moved into a cramped one-bedroom across town. Evan Reed never found steady work, and eventually stopped coming home altogether. Linda took a part-time job at a dental office, her once perfect nails chipped from paperwork and coffee stains. Meanwhile, Claire Dalton adjusted to her new life with quiet joy. The studio apartment she'd once feared would be lonely now felt like peace. Her mismatched furniture made the place hers. She cooked for one, watched movies without commentary, and slept through the night without the echo of slammed doors or guilt. Her boss offered her a new role lead coordinator. She said yes, without hesitation. On a Saturday morning, Claire sat by her window, sunlight spilling across her coffee cup. She thought of her father, the man who built that house, who believed love could hold everything together. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe love wasn't about holding on. Maybe it was about knowing when to let go. She smiled faintly and looked around her apartment, the clean countertops, the framed photo of her dad on the shelf. They thought I was disposable, she whispered, but I was the one holding everything up. Outside, the city pulsed with quiet life, people hurrying to places they cared about, and for the first time, Claire wasn't standing still. She wasn't waiting to be chosen, forgiven, or needed. She had already chosen herself.